Authorities arresting the captain of the sunken South Korean ferry on Friday after accounts that he was one of the first to abandon ship. Welcome to your Friday afternoon news hub. I'm Sarah Murray. Investigators are scrutinizing the captain and crew's final actions in that South Korean ferry as it began to sink on Wednesday. Nearly 300 passengers are still missing. More than 24 are dead. Divers were able to briefly enter the ship this afternoon, but they didn't find any signs of life. Joining me now is Petersen. He's a maritime security expert, and he's the president of Security Dynamics. Thanks for joining us, Kim.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you have 30 years in this business of maritime security, of national security. You kind of know how investigations like this go. What are officials going to be looking for as they dig into the final actions by the captain and the crew?
Well, bear in mind, this was not the regular captain for this route. He was a stand-in for the regular captain who was not on board. They're going to look to see whether or not his actions followed both international law. Now, there's an international convention called the Safety of Life at Sea, which governs the behavior of officers and crew on board ships. And there are also Korean laws as well. It's my understanding that the first two offenses that are being investigated for possible prosecution are negligent acts leading to death and also behavior that is inconsistent with the laws governing the requirements of officers and crew on board ships with passengers.
There are a lot of concerns out there right now. There were concerns that there weren't enough lifeboats. There were concerns that passengers were being told to stay put even as the boat was essentially tilting. Why would that be the direction that they were getting?
Well, we aren't really clear of the timeline. We now have transcripts from VTS, the Vessel Traffic Service that was on Jeju Island, the island that the vessel was inbound to, when the first notification was given by radio that the vessel was in trouble. We believe that what happened is that when the incident first occurred and the captain made it to the bridge, and of course he wasn't there when the incident first occurred, that he gave the order for passengers to stay put, with the expectation that he and his officers would be able to stabilize the vessel because they realized it was going unstable. He waited almost 30 minutes before one of his officers said that the vessel was now listing 5 degrees and that they were in a critical situation, at which point he gave the order for an evacuation. But one of the crew members says he's not sure that that order ever made it onto the PA system. Now, one of the problems that we have here is that the reports from the scene are incorrect. There are no lifeboats on board this vessel that we're aware of. There are life rafts, and there's a big difference between those. With a lifeboat, you can actually get passengers and crew onto the boats and have them lowered into the water. In the case of life rafts, they have to be manually released from their lashings on the deck and lowered into the water. If the vessel is still upright, you're going to have people that are going to have to go down a gangway, and with that many passengers on board, that would be very difficult. They would also have to enter into the water in order to board the life rafts that would be floating adjacent to the ship. So there are a lot of issues at play here.
Of course, Kim, now we have nearly 300 people who are still missing. Many of them are believed to be trapped inside the ship. What are the possibilities that there could still be survivors there?
Well, at the outset, there was probably a fairly high degree of likelihood that some of the passengers had found voids in the ship. These are areas where there are air pockets that could sustain life. However, with every hour that goes by, the likelihood of being able to save any of these survivors, should they even still be alive, diminishes. Bear in mind that if they're in an environment on the vessel where there's not a lot of air, then the depletion of oxygen is going to increase depending on how many people are in the room. And the water temperature at 50 degrees Fahrenheit is sufficient to where if they're wet, you're going to be hypothermic within 2 hours. And it's not looking good.
Just a huge tragedy. Petersen, thanks very much for joining us.
You're welcome.